There is a measurement being taken right now, somewhere in the dark, by something that does not need light to see. Not a metaphor, not a myth, a measurement. And the oldest minds on this earth, the ones who pressed reed into clay before the first city had a name, the ones who stood inside exile and still heard the voice of God, they all described the same thing. They measured it. They argued over it. They were silenced for insisting it was real. The measurements they left behind do not agree with each other. They are too precise for coincidence, too vast for architecture. They point to something that was never meant to be built. They point to something that was always already there. What you are about to hear exists across several kinds of truth at once. Some of it was cut into stone and confirmed by excavation. Some is still disputed in journals that almost no one reads. And some lives in the silence between what the tablets say and what institutions decided they meant. The reason this knowledge was contained was not because it was false. It was because it could not be made to fit inside the containers that power requires. Hold all of it. Begin with a number. 7,800. That is the total interior floor space, in square cubits, of the temple described in the closing chapters of the book of Ezekiel. The calculation is methodical. The main hall at 800 square cubits, the inner sanctuary at 400. 90 side rooms distributed across 3 ascending stories totaling 1,800. The massive western structure accounting for the remaining 4,800. Add them, the sum is exact 7,800. In the Hebrew system of letter-number correspondence, 7,800 reduces to 78 times 100, and 78 is 3 times 26. 26 is the numerical value of the divine name, the 4 letters that observant Jews do not pronounce. The name that is written but withheld. The name that stands at the center of the tradition like a locked door. The temple is not merely a building. The floor plan is a signature. The architecture is a name written in stone and proportion, a numerical portrait of the deity inscribed into the geometry of the space where that deity agreed to dwell. This is the vision that came to Ezekiel in the 25th year of the Babylonian exile, in 573 BCE. 13 years had passed since Solomon's temple had been destroyed. The city was ash. The priesthood was scattered. The ark was gone. And into this catastrophe, not before it, not in the comfort of a functioning cult, but inside the rubble of everything that had been, came the most technically precise architectural vision in all of biblical literature. Ezekiel is set down on a very high mountain. He does not climb it. He is placed there. As if the geography of vision operates by different rules than the geography of feet. Standing in the gateway is a figure whose appearance is like bronze. Not warm bronze, not decorative bronze. The cold, watchful, inhuman bronze of an instrument. This figure holds a measuring reed of 6 long cubits and a linen cord. It speaks one sentence. Look with your eyes. Hear with your ears. Set your heart upon everything I am about to show you. For you were brought here in order to be shown it. Then the measuring begins. What follows in Ezekiel chapters 40 through 48 is one of the strangest sustained passages in any sacred text. It reads like a surveyor's report. Wall thickness, threshold depth, stairway count, gate dimensions, the outer court, the inner court, the priest's chambers, the altar measurements, the orientation of every doorway. The bronze figure measures, and Ezekiel records the same vocabulary cycling through the same architectural grammar. Court after court, gate after gate, as if the act of measurement is itself a liturgy. One scholar who has spent years inside this text notes something the casual reader misses. Ezekiel devotes far more attention to the gates, the passages, and the boundary systems than to the temple house itself. The architecture is not primarily about the building, it is about the thresholds. It is about where holiness ends and where profane space begins. The geometry is a system of quarantine, a set of lines that define what can approach what, and how close, and from which direction. The east gate matters most. The divine glory, when it departed before the destruction, left through the east. And in Ezekiel's vision, the divine glory returns through the east. The gate that was the exit of catastrophe becomes the entrance of restoration. Architecture is theology made spatial. The building remembers what happened. It has been designed to make the return possible. Then the tone of the text breaks. The figure is still measuring. The gates are still being cataloged. And then the ground shines. A sound arrives. The text calls it the sound of many waters, and the divine glory fills the house. And Ezekiel falls on his face. The blueprint was the preparation. The presence was the point. Rabbinic authorities very nearly removed this text from the canon. The debates are recorded. The concern was not that Ezekiel was fraudulent. The concern was that his measurements contradicted the Torah. The dimensions did not match Moses. The sacrificial protocols diverged. The geometry implied a sacred order that had not been authorized by the foundational law. One rabbi is quoted as saying that if Elijah himself came and explained the contradictions, they would accept it. Until then, the book was dangerous. It survived by the thinnest of margins, preserved by those who believed the contradictions could eventually be reconciled. They have not been. Now let the mind travel forward. Through 6 centuries of accumulated catastrophe and hope, through the destruction of the Second Temple and the Roman siege and the scattering of the diaspora, until it arrives at the island of Patmos in the Aegean, where a man named John is in the Spirit on the Lord's day and hears behind him a voice like a trumpet. John is taken to a great high mountain. The language is deliberate. Ezekiel was placed on a very high mountain. John is taken to a great high mountain. The grammar of vision repeats. The mountain is the threshold between the measurable and the unmeasurable. The New Jerusalem descends out of heaven from God. It is not built. It descends. It arrives from outside the frame of the world, from whatever lies above the architecture of ordinary reality, and it settles onto the earth with the finality of a statement that ends all previous statements. John is given a gold measuring rod. He measures the city. The length and the breadth and the height of it are equal. 12,000 stadia in every direction. Take the common Greek stadion at approximately 185 meters. Multiply. The result is roughly 2,200 kilometers on each side. A perfect cube more than 2,000 kilometers tall, wide, and deep. If you place this structure on the surface of the Earth, its base alone would consume a landmass larger than the continental United States. Its walls would rise through the troposphere, through the stratosphere, through the mesosphere, into the airless dark of the exosphere, and continue beyond into the void where satellites orbit and the sun's light begins to thin into nothing. There would be no sky for anyone standing anywhere near it. There would be only the wall. An endless vertical surface of jasper and gold and layered gemstone, casting a shadow across entire continents, blotting out the sun not as an eclipse does, briefly and cyclically, but permanently, categorically, as a statement of what has replaced what. This is not a city for humans. The scale makes that clear. The cubic form makes it clearer. The only explicitly cubic sacred space in the Hebrew Bible is the Holy of Holies in Solomon's temple, 20 cubits by 20 cubits by 20 cubits. The innermost chamber, the place where the ark rested, the place entered only under the most restricted ritual conditions, the room that could kill you if you entered unprepared. Revelation takes that cube and scales it to the size of a continent. What was once the most restricted and dangerous space in the known world has been expanded until it contains everything. And then John says something that overturns the entire logic of sacred architecture. He says, there is no temple in the city. There is no temple, because the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are its temple. The building that once housed the presence has been dissolved into the presence itself. Every veil, every threshold, every gate, every boundary system that Ezekiel measured with such precision, all of it swallowed. There is nowhere left to stand outside the holy. The quarantine has been abolished, not by contamination, by totality. Now let the mind move again, past Ezekiel, past Solomon, past Moses, into the deep stratigraphy of the ancient Near East, where the same dream was being dreamed by different peoples in different languages, with different names for the same overwhelming reality. In the Sumerian city of Lagash, sometime between 2150 and 2125 BCE, a king named Gudea received a dream. The dream was not gentle. The god Ninjirsu appeared in it as something that cannot be held comfortably in the mind. Massive as heaven and earth, the text uses that phrase without irony, as a literal description of scale. Possessing the vast wings of the mythical Imdugud bird, the divine thunderbird whose wingspan shadows cities, and where a body should have been, below the wings, not flesh, a swirling, deafening hurricane. Crouching lions flanked the lower form. The god was not a being that stood in a room. The god was a being that contained the room. Within this vision, a second figure appeared, a celestial architect holding a slab of deep blue lapis lazuli, the most precious stone of the ancient world, the stone ground into pigment for the sky in sacred paintings, the stone whose color was the color of the vault of heaven. On the lapis lazuli, the architect had etched the exact ground plan of the temple that Gudea was to build. Gudea woke. He had the blueprint carved onto the lap of his own diorite statue, a figure now housed in the Louvre. A king with a building plan resting on his stone knees for 4,000 years. And in recent excavations at the ancient site of Girsu, archaeologists working with the British Museum uncovered the physical foundations of the Aninu temple. The footprint of the ruins matches the blueprint on the statue. The divine architecture, transmitted in a dream, built in stone, confirmed in rubble. The Sumerians did not merely believe that gods gave blueprints. They built the proof into the earth and left it there for 4,000 years. Authorization is everything in this tradition. The blueprint must come from above. The measurements must be given, not invented. Moses receives the tabernacle plans on the mountain. Gudea receives the temple plan in the dream. Ezekiel receives the vision from the bronze figure with the reed. The human hand executes, the divine mind designs, and the geometry, in every case, is not ornamental, it is the content. Far to the west of Mesopotamia, on a limestone plateau above the Nile, the same logic was being inscribed in stone on a scale that still resists easy comprehension. The Great Pyramid of Giza was aligned to true geographic north, with a deviation of less than 4 minutes of arc. The methods that may have achieved this involve sustained, disciplined attention to the sky over long periods of time. Methods that require a civilization that regards precision as a form of devotion. The seams between the original limestone casing blocks now mostly stripped away, but documented by early surveyors were so tight that a blade could not be inserted between them. But here is what the institutions do not emphasize. The monument's base perimeter, multiplied by a specific factor, yields a figure close to the Earth's equatorial circumference. The height, multiplied by the same factor, approximates the polar radius. The factor itself is 43,200. That number is not arbitrary. It appears across the cosmological mathematics of cultures that had no documented contact with Egypt. The Hindu Yuga cycle runs 4,320,000 years. The Babylonian king list assigns 432,000 years to the dynasties before the flood. Norse mythology calculates the armies of Ragnarok at 800 warriors marching from each of 540 doors in Valhalla. 800 times 540 is 432,000. The number recurs. The precessional constant 72 years per degree of axial wobble divides into it cleanly. Half the seconds in a solar day equals it exactly. The same number encoded in Egypt, in Babylon, in the Vedas, in Norse myth. Whether the pyramid builders encoded these relationships intentionally, or whether the number is a natural harmonic that appears wherever ancient minds map time and sky onto stone, that question remains genuinely open. What is not open is the precision. The alignment is real. The geometry is real. The monument exists in relationship to the Earth's dimensions in ways that early surveyors documented and that later surveyors have confirmed. A civilization in the Copper Age embedded cosmological knowledge into stone at a scale and accuracy that took modern instrumentation to fully measure. Below the plateau, 21.5 meters south of the Great Pyramid's base, a passageway was cut directly into the bedrock. It descends for 4.5 meters, 1 meter wide, less than a meter tall. It terminates in a chamber measuring 1.5 meters by 1.2 meters. There is no sarcophagus. There is no inscription. There is no structural function that anyone has satisfactorily explained. It is too small to be a tomb. It is too isolated to be a corridor. It is a geometric gesture cut into the earth and then abandoned, or completed, depending on what the gesture was intended to mean. It sits in the literature largely unaddressed, an aborted blueprint in the rock beneath the most studied monument on Earth. Now let the mind travel north and west, past the fall of Rome and the rise of the medieval church, until it arrives in the Scottish Midlands in the 15th century, where a man named William St. Clair began building a chapel that was too small to be a cathedral and too elaborate to be a parish church. Rosslyn Chapel, the arcade of 12 pointed arches and 14 pillars, more than 100 green men faces of foliage, mouths open and disgorging vines, the dance of death, the angel musicians in the Lady Chapel, and 213 stone cubes, each one carved with a distinct geometric pattern, protruding from the arches at irregular intervals, like a code that was never meant to be read by anyone who did not already know what they were looking for. Two researchers spent years studying those cubes through the lens of cymatics, the science of how sound frequencies manifest as visible geometric patterns when vibrated through a physical medium. The Chladni figures that emerge when specific acoustic frequencies are played through sand on a metal plate produce symmetrical geometric shapes. The shapes on the Rosslyn cubes, they argued, match specific Chladni patterns. Each cube is a frozen frequency. The architecture is a musical score written in stone. To read the score, they turn to the 13 stone angels carved into the bases of the arches, some holding instruments, one holding a literal musical stave. The angles of the stave, correlated with the geometric patterns on the cubes, yielded a sequence of notes. The sequence, when played, produced a composition researchers named the Rosslyn Motet. The motet opens with an augmented fourth. Throughout the Middle Ages, the augmented fourth was called the diabolus in musica, the devil in music. It was formally prohibited in liturgical composition by ecclesiastical authorities because its severe dissonance was believed to agitate the soul, to open something in the listener that sacred music was supposed to close. When played inside Rosslyn Chapel, the carved sandstone pillars carry the vibration through the stone, and the unresolved harmonic tension washes through the space without resolving, without landing, without offering the closure that consonance provides. William St. Clair built a church whose hidden music begins with the forbidden chord. He froze the diabolus in musica into the architecture of a consecrated space and left it there, vibrating silently in the stone for 500 years, under the nose of the institution that had banned it. The chapel also contains what has been described as a carving of maize, corn, a plant native to the Americas. The chapel was completed in 1486. Columbus did not reach the Americas until 1492. Rosslyn's official materials acknowledge the anomaly. They do not resolve it. The carving is there. The plant should not have been known. The explanation, if there is one, has not been established. These are the details that institutions leave unaddressed, not because they are unimportant, but because addressing them would require opening questions that the official account cannot close. Now consider what all of this, taken together, implies. The tradition of sacred geometry is not a tradition of hidden knowledge in the conspiratorial sense. It is something stranger and more disturbing than that. It is the record of minds across thousands of years and dozens of cultures arriving independently at the same conviction: that the cosmos has a structure, that the structure can be measured, that the measurements can be replicated in stone, and that the replication creates a point of contact between what is human and what is not. The horror that runs beneath this conviction is not that the geometry is false. It is that the geometry may be real, and that what it maps may be indifferent to us. The Gnostic texts found at Nag Hammadi in 1945, buried in a sealed jar in the Egyptian desert, hidden there, possibly in response to a 4th century order demanding the destruction of unauthorized texts, push this horror to its logical conclusion. In the cosmology of the Apocryphon of John, the geometry of the universe is not a gift, it is a cage. The Demiurge named Yaldabaoth, depicted as a lion-headed serpent, a being who declared himself the only God and did not know he was wrong, fashioned the material world as a corrupted shadow copy of the true spiritual realm. He appointed 12 archons to govern the celestial spheres. Each one governs a layer of the cosmic structure. Each layer is a lock. In this reading, the awe-inspiring precision of the pyramids, the encoded measurements of Ezekiel's temple, the processional constants embedded in myth and monument across every civilization, all of it is the architecture of the prison. The Demiurge built the cage with perfect mathematics, because perfect mathematics is the most inescapable kind. The Gnostics believed that the only escape was knowledge, gnosis, the specific harmonic and geometric sequences that allowed a soul to recognize the seals of the aeons, to name the archons correctly, to pass through the celestial gates without being turned back. The geometry that imprisoned could also, if fully understood, liberate. The key and the lock were made of the same mathematics. The church hunted the Gnostics, not because they were dangerous to public order. They were hunted because they taught that the architecture of the universe was a malevolent construction by a false architect, that the God who built the world was not the God worth worshiping. That is a claim no institution built on the sanctity of creation can accommodate. The texts were ordered destroyed. Most were destroyed. 46 were buried in a jar in the desert and waited 17 centuries for someone to dig them up. The Dead Sea Scrolls, found in the caves above Qumran in 1947, preserve a different form of the same obsession. The Temple Scroll, the longest scroll in the collection, more than 8 meters of preserved text, describes a temple whose outer court measures 1,600 cubits on a side, roughly 160 acres of sacred enclosure, 12 gates, a surrounding moat, thoroughfares organized by tribal affiliation. This is not a temple, this is a city organized as a temple. A sacred geometry expanded to urban scale. A vision of sacred space so vast it anticipates Revelation's New Jerusalem without yet reaching its cosmic extremity. The community at Qumran understood itself as an alternative priesthood. In the absence of a temple they could inhabit physically, they inhabited one textually. They read and copied and elaborated the architecture of the ideal sanctuary until the text itself became the sacred space. The scroll was the temple. The reading was the ritual. The geometry was preserved in ink because the stone had been taken from them. This is what suppression actually looks like in this tradition. Not a single dramatic act of censorship. Not a council that voted to burn the blueprints, but the slow pressure of canon formation. The gradual narrowing of what counted as authoritative. The marginalization of texts that carried rival cosmologies, rival priesthoods, rival architectures of the sacred. First Enoch survived complete only in Ethiopic. The Qumran texts sat in caves for 2,000 years. The Nag Hammadi codices sat in a jar. The geometry was never fully destroyed. It was displaced, archived in the margins, preserved by the very act of hiding. In the heavenly temple that Enoch described, the prototype that every subsequent sacred architect was, consciously or not, attempting to replicate that vision, is the most extreme of all. Enoch approaches a wall built of white marble and crystals, surrounded by tongues of fire. He enters a greater house whose walls are hewn stones of snow resting on a mosaic floor of crystal. From beneath the crystal floor, torrents of fire pour outward. The space is simultaneously as hot as fire and as cold as ice. The corridors are not defined by static walls, but by aggressive, undulating flames that serve as load-bearing structures. The ceiling mirrors the chaotic streaking paths of lightning and stars. And then, beyond the second house, the crystalline throne, wheels of fire beneath it, rivers of fire flowing from it. A figure on the throne whose face Enoch cannot look at, whose radiance the text cannot describe without immediately retreating into metaphor and silence. Recent scholarship has argued that this vision is not simply a heavenly copy of the Jerusalem sanctuary. It is a critique. The heavenly temple is so overwhelming, so hostile to biological existence, so far beyond what any earthly structure could approximate, that the earthly temples are revealed by contrast as broken shadows' sincere attempts at the impossible. Gestures towards something that cannot be contained in stone or cedar or gold. Every temple ever built was an admission of failure dressed as devotion. The measuring reed in Ezekiel's vision, the gold measuring rod in John's vision, the lapis lazuli blueprint on Gudia's slab, the frozen frequencies in Rosslyn's arches, the cardinal alignment of the pyramid to the turning of the earth. All of it is the same act, repeated across 4,000 years. The human attempt to write down the dimensions of something that has no dimensions. To build a room large enough for something that contains all rooms. And somewhere in that repetition is the question that none of these traditions fully answers. If the geometry is real, if the measurements correspond to something actual in the structure of the cosmos, then what is the mind that designed it? What does it want from the creatures who keep finding the pattern and keep building toward it? What does it mean that we keep being shown the blueprint and keep falling short of the building? The bronze figure stands in the gateway. It has been standing there for a very long time. The measuring reed has not been put down. Somewhere in the same archive that held Ezekiel's vision and Enoch's ascent, there is a text that has not yet been opened in these hours. The Book of Giants, fragments of it, preserved at Qumran, telling what the Watcher's children dreamed before the flood came. Those dreams have not been spoken here tonight. They wait in the dark of the same tradition, sealed, patient, belonging to another night. Now let the weight of all this settle. You have been moving through stone and scripture for a long time. Through exile and apocalypse. Through crystal and flame. Through desert north lines and Scottish carvings. Through buried books and forbidden interpretations. Through the possibility that the sacred is not always soft, and that beauty may be a boundary around something too intense to meet directly. But you are not inside Ezekiel's temple tonight. You are not standing before the eastern gate. You are not beneath the descending cube of the New Jerusalem. You are not crossing the crystal threshold in Enoch's vision. You are not sealed in the pyramid's dark passages. You are not trying to hear the Rosslyn cubes. You are not arguing with archons at the edge of the visible world. You are here, in an ordinary room, under an ordinary ceiling, with ordinary walls holding ordinary darkness in place. And perhaps that is a gift. The ceiling above you is not made of lightning. The floor beneath you is not crystal over fire. The walls around you are not 2,000 kilometers high. The door near you is only a door. The silence is only silence. For now, the measuring reed has been set down. The linen cord has been coiled. The bronze-colored figure has turned away from the gate. The river still moves somewhere beyond the threshold, but it does not need you to follow it tonight. The city remains above the horizon. The pyramid keeps its north. The chapel keeps its music. The buried texts keep their difficult dreams, and the geometry holds. That is enough. Let the wall be a wall. Let the threshold stay closed. Let the measured space protect you from the unmeasured dark. There will always be another gate, another number, another chamber, another symbol waiting to be read. But not tonight. Tonight, the holy remains at a distance. Tonight, the cube does not descend. Tonight, the fire stays behind the crystal. Tonight, the stone does not sing. Tonight, the archons do not speak. Tonight, the sacred geometry is only a pattern in the dark, slowly fading behind your eyes. And if something is still measuring, somewhere beyond thought, let it measure. If a reed touches a wall in a temple that has never been built, let it touch. If a river begins beneath a threshold you cannot see, let it flow where it must. You do not need to cross it. Not now. For now, stay on this side, the safe side, the human side, the side where distance still exists. Breathe. Let the numbers loosen. Let the walls soften. Let the hidden architecture withdraw into sleep. And should you dream of a temple tonight, do not enter the innermost room. Stand at the gate. Listen for water. Watch the eastern sky. And wait until the figure with the reed turns away.